This is my Monstera Deliciosa Variegata, and until now I grew it on a simple wooden pole. This has to stop though. Why? Let me tell you. Reason 1, Monstera Deliciosa is a fast grower. Every year she not only outgrows the pole, but also outgrows my space, resulting in me having to chop and prop. And this leads to reason 2. Every year I air layer the plant and live with a ugly ass moss ball on there, only to then propagate and still come out with a shitty top cutting. All of the variegation turns brown immediately afterwards and I'm left with this kind of plant. And since this isn't the look I'm going for, I came up with a solution to my problem. Let me show you. Isn't this a beautiful beast in theory? I used to grow it like this, just a simple wooden pole and another support. It works for a while, but it's not the optimal solution. Recently, I discovered the perfect moss poles for me, which are these half-moon shaped foldable plastic poles. The moss keeps moist fairly long, which I appreciate a lot. So this time I used such a pole to prepare and air layer the plant for the upcoming chop. By the way, hi, I'm Kristina from Leafylasta, and this is a video all about Monstera Deliciosa Variegata and how I plan to propagate, chop and extend her. First, let's examine this little experimental setup I got going over here. As you can see, I attached the moss pole on the top half of the plant and gave it some time to grow into the pole already. Since they're open on the top and the bottom, I had to use some cling film to seal the bottom to keep the moisture inside. Other than that, I just tied it to the plant. And that was it. You can already see a lot of roots growing inside of here, which is great. That's what we need to propagate this plant successfully. Unfortunately, I have to deal with leaves like these. That's normal if your leaves are too wide almost entirely, because the white parts will inevitably die off, especially if the plant is stressed. For example, because you propagate or if you keep it in not optimal conditions. After checking if we have sufficient roots in the pole already, which we have, now I think it's time for the chop so that we can extend later on. Let's do this. Got my trusty scissors. To decide where to cut, I just want to go with the bottom node on this pole because this part will be submerged in soil. To make this short and sweet, I want to cut right here in between this node and this node. And it's done. Do you ever get this rush of adrenaline and dopamine and just good feeling whenever you cut a plant? I just love propagating, it's exhilarating. Now the most funny thing here is this aerial root right here has grown into the substrate and I cannot get it out. So I'll either have to cut it or just uproot everything and then I can pot the top cutting up. With the rest of this plant, I just want to make some single node cuttings of this so I can sell them in my shop. Starting at the top, I'll have those rooted single node cuttings. Okay, be gone. Last few. And here I have the same problem as well. I just have the aerial roots growing into the substrate. I just stick them in usually so the plant can get just a bigger root system. Yeah, but now they are grown in there. 7 single node cuttings, and these I'll have to untangle now. Let's get going. Ooh, look at this. Hello? Okay, so these will definitely rip when I pull on them. Oof, we've got some good roots in here. After I managed to free these roots from the pot, I'm now left with my top cutting still attached to the moss pole. It's on there. I want to remove a little bit more of the moss from the bottom, I think, and simply pot this into some soil. I'll just try to gently pull everything out that I can pull out. I think that's enough to fill it up with a little bit of soil. I've got a clean, fresh pot. We're going to chop this leaf, and I'm going to use up the rest of my Cybertonica Universal Soil Mix. Now I just need to spaghetti those roots in here without breaking them. It fits. It's a little squished in there, but you know, I think that's all right. Holds up by itself already. I love these plastic moss poles. They are so stable in themselves and also in the pot. They are not wonky at all. I love that. Now, isn't this a beautiful little extension of the plant it once was? And I'm very hopeful that it will keep growing since it has so many roots in the moss pole already. I'm also fertilizing sometimes with watering the pole so it gets some nutrients from the pole as well. This little pot is still very small. I think the roots will outgrow it quite quickly, but I'll rather start with a small pot and upgrade eventually. And while we're at it, I'm also going to use the Cybertonica Sphagnum moss to fill up the pole more because it already outgrew the moss again. And this moss comes pre-moistened already, so you don't have to wet it. It's already wet. It's nice and fluffy. I love this moss so much. This sphagnum moss is planted and harvested in the Netherlands, so it's not an import from New Zealand, which is far more environmentally friendly, in my opinion. I am done and can move on to the propagations. All of these single node cuttings, I do want to shorten the aerial roots a little bit and then root them in a simple water jar. Let's just cut a bit off the roots. So I still have a good chunk of roots out of which we can grow new roots. Now these are very typical single node cuttings. You can see the axillary bud right here, the little nub. We have a few new roots coming in down here, and then one bigger aerial root already growing. And then here the petiole and the leaf attached. So, simple water jar. In they go. Oh, bye. Okay, number one. Now I also need to pot up the rest of the cuttings that are already rooted. These will grow way faster than the water propagations, which is nice because I'll have stock for different times of the year in my shop. For example, I have this root system here and it will regrow in no time. I know that because I already done it like twice at least, or 3 times like that, and it works really well. Maybe this one will do. And you know what, while I am putting this up, I want to talk to you about something that I still haven't found out completely. Now, I personally am of the belief that there is a Monstera large form and another Monstera Deliciosa that just grows in a different growing pattern. The internodal spacing is longer typically, the leaves don't get as big. Some call it the Deliciosa Borsigiana, some just call it small form and large form. I have found conflicting evidence on both of these theories, so either both exist or that it's one and the same. But especially with Monstera Deliciosa Variegata, at least the one that I have, I see such a big difference in the growing pattern to all of my other Monstera.
Editing Goblin here. I just wanted to chime in and say that I found a video from Chris. His channel is Pretty in Green, and he has a full video on Monstera small form, large form, especially when it comes to Albo Variegata. It's very well researched with citations and everything, and I believe it's a great video and you should watch it definitely after you finish this one. Go ahead and check him out. I'll link it down in the description as well. That's it.
I never get leaves that are even comparable to the size of my other green Monsteras. I have two that are probably large form, and then I had one that was small form, at least I think so. And for me, the small form looked very much like the variegated one. And I just don't know what to tell you, but especially in comparison to this Deliciosa Variegata, my other green ones are large form. I don't know what else I can tell you. The amount of time it takes for the green ones to go from plants like this with small leaves to really, really big leaves with a more rounded shapes, inner fenestrations is so much shorter than with this plant. Before you come at me, I know Monstera Variegata has less energy to grow in general because of all the variegated areas and hence having less chlorophyll, hence having less photosynthesis, and thus maybe not growing as fast as her green sisters and brothers. So in all honesty, this is another reason why I am now trying to grow it on the lazy pole, the moss pole, because my hopes are that I can maybe finally grow it bigger and have the leaves increase in size. This would be an absolute dream. Next one done. And yes, I have it in a very bright spot. I provide it with fertilizer, with some well-draining, very chunky soil mix, and it's in a southwest facing window. Of course, I live in Germany, so bear in mind my sun intensity and sun hours a day aren't the best. I'm still not sure how I'm supposed to feel about large form and small form Monstera. I think there are differences. That's just my opinion based on my own experience, but maybe you have more insight into this, more experience maybe growing your own Monsteras and just seeing differences or not seeing differences. So maybe you can let me know down in the comments. Maybe we can find out a little bit more about this whole thing. This is definitely not going to fit in this small little pot right here. This is a Hoya mix I'm using right now. I'm making it a little more chunkier, so I filled it up with a little bit more perlite to aerate even better in here. And with this, the last one is done. But wait, we still have more, because of course I am prepared and have a few cuttings that I took a few months back. So these are already rooted in water, but they also already grow new leaves and a new shoot. I have a bunch of these, so I also want to pot them up because I think they need some soil and some more nutrients than the water can provide. Okay. With this little one, I'm not sure. I'm going to pot it up, but it seems to be almost all white. So this might be a total failure. And this is how I grow myself an army of Monstera Deliciosa Variegata. I'll have more than enough to sell for the next few months. And then this one I will keep growing for myself, of course. And I hope to achieve some sizable leaves in the future thanks to the moss pole. All of this seems like a dream to me. If you would have said to me like 4 or 5 years back at the beginning of my plant journey that I would one day have a table full of Monstera Deliciosa Variegata, I wouldn't have believed you. This was my first rare collector plant that I got as a cutting, and then it died. I got another one, and now I just chop mine up every year, get a million more cuttings out of it. I'm not even scared anymore to do it. This plant just reminds me of how long I have already been collecting plants for and how far we've come already, or I have come, and how much I've learned, how much I've grown, how many plants I've grown, and that's why I will always love Monstera Deliciosa. Don't forget to comment your opinion on the small form and large form debate. I would love to hear some more opinions. I'll see you next time. Until then, enjoy your plants and goodbye!